It began innocently enough, just another evening at the office party. The laughter and clinking glasses filled the air as colleagues mingled and enjoyed the rare chance to unwind. I, Sophia, was sipping my drink near the corner when my boss David approached me. David, with his effortless charm and confident demeanour, always had a way of commanding attention. He smiled, a smile that was both disarming and slightly mischievous. We started chatting about various things, from the latest company project to our weekend plans. Eventually, the conversation drifted to our favourite sports teams. David, ever the competitor, suggested we make a bet on the upcoming basketball game. He was an ardent supporter of the rival team to mine, and the playful rivalry made the idea of a bet even more enticing. Confident in my team's ability, I agreed without hesitation. The atmosphere was light-hearted, and it felt like just another playful exchange between colleagues. "What do you want to bet?" I asked, expecting something trivial, like buying coffee for a week. David's eyes twinkled with a hint of mischief as he replied, "Whoever loses has to do something of the winner's choice." At that moment, the gravity of his words didn't fully register. The drinks and the festive environment made everything seem like harmless fun. The evening continued with more laughter and conversation, and I felt certain my team would win, brushing aside any concerns about what David might ask for if I lost. Sunday arrived, and I watched the game with growing excitement. However, my confidence quickly turned to anxiety as my team struggled and eventually lost. The butterflies in my stomach returned, remembering the bet, but I tried to convince myself that David wouldn't ask for anything too serious. Monday morning, I arrived at work, feeling a mix of nervousness and curiosity. David was waiting for me, a knowing smile on his face. He reminded me of the bet, and trying to keep the mood light, I asked him what he wanted me to do. David's expression turned more serious as he said, "I want you to go on a weekend trip with me, without telling your husband, Mark." The request took me by surprise. What had seemed like a harmless bet now felt like a dangerous proposition. I felt a whirlwind of emotions, surprise, discomfort, and an inexplicable thrill. The idea of doing something hidden, something that would break the rules, was both frightening and exciting. David looked at me, waiting for my answer, and I knew that backing out of the bet wasn't an option. The pressure of the moment, coupled with the embarrassment of reneging on my word, made me nod in agreement, trying to mask my growing anxiety. I didn't realize that this decision would set off a chain of events that would spiral out of control. As the weekend approached, my apprehension grew. I struggled to concentrate at work, my mind consumed by thoughts of the upcoming trip. When the day finally arrived, I told Mark I was going on a work-related retreat. The lie tasted bitter, but I managed to maintain a facade of calm. I packed a suitcase with clothes suitable for a casual getaway, all the while battling a storm of conflicting emotions. David picked me up in his car, and as we drove out of the city, the reality of what I was doing began to sink in. The drive was filled with a mix of light conversation and tense silence, the weight of the secret hanging heavily between us. We arrived at a charming lakeside cabin, secluded and picturesque. The setting was beautiful, but the circumstances made it feel like a trap. David tried to ease the tension, playing the perfect host, but the underlying current of what was happening was impossible to ignore. That evening, we sat by the lake, the water reflecting the moonlight in a serene yet haunting manner. David poured us each a glass of wine, and we began to talk. The conversation started innocently enough, but soon drifted into more personal territory. David shared stories about his life, his struggles, and his dreams. His openness was disarming, and I found myself drawn to him in a way I hadn't anticipated. As the night grew darker, the lines between right and wrong began to blur. David moved closer, his eyes never leaving mine. He spoke in a low, gentle voice. "Sophia, I've been drawn to you for a long time. This weekend is something I've wanted for so long." His confession sent a shiver down my spine. I felt a rush of conflicting emotions. Guilt, excitement, fear. Before I could respond, David leaned in and kissed me. The kiss was gentle at first, but quickly became more intense. I found myself responding, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. The forbidden nature of our actions made it all the more intoxicating. We spent the night together, the passion between us undeniable. The next morning, the weight of what had happened hit me like a tidal wave. I felt a deep sense of shame and guilt. David, sensing my turmoil, tried to reassure me, but his words offered little comfort. As the weekend continued, I found myself caught in a cycle of desire and regret. The attraction to David was undeniable, but the betrayal of Mark gnawed at my conscience. We returned to the city on Sunday evening. I felt a heavy sense of dread as I walked into my home, the lie I had told Mark still fresh in my mind. He greeted me with his usual warmth and love, and the guilt threatened to overwhelm me. I knew I had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. In the following days, David and I tried to maintain a sense of normalcy at work, but every glance, every accidental touch carried the weight of our secret. The guilt and shame became constant companions, shadowing my every move. Mark, ever the loving husband, started to notice the changes in my behaviour. He asked if everything was all right, his concern genuine. Each time I reassured him, forcing a smile that never quite reached my eyes. The deceit felt like a heavy burden, and I struggled to carry it. One evening, as I sat alone in the living room, the reality of my situation crashed down on me. I loved Mark deeply, but my feelings for David were real and powerful. The emotional turmoil was becoming unbearable. I knew I couldn't continue living this double life. I had to make a choice, no matter how painful it might be. I decided to end things with David. The next day, I met him after work and told him we needed to talk. We went to a quiet park, the atmosphere heavy with tension. David looked at me, his eyes searching mine, sensing that something was wrong. "Sophia, what's going on?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. I took a deep breath, struggling to find the right words. "David, I can't keep doing this. I love Mark and this affair is tearing me apart. We have to end it." David's face fell, the pain and disappointment evident in his eyes. "Sophia, I don't want to lose you, but I understand. If this is what you need, I'll respect your decision." Tears welled up in my eyes as I reached out to touch his hand. "I'll always cherish what we had, David, but it's time for me to face the consequences of my actions and try to make things right with Mark." The farewell was filled with unspoken emotions and lingering regret. As I walked away from David, I felt a sense of loss, but also a glimmer of hope. It was time to confront the truth and seek forgiveness. When I returned home, I knew I had to be honest with Mark, no matter how difficult it would be. I sat him down and told him everything, laying bare the secrets and the guilt. His reaction was a mix of shock, hurt, and disbelief, but he listened patiently. "Sophia, I don't know what to say," Mark finally spoke, his voice strained with emotion. "This hurts more than I can express, but I appreciate your honesty. We'll need time to heal, but I love you, and I'm willing to try to work through this together." His words were a balm to my wounded soul, offering a chance at redemption. The road ahead would be challenging, filled with difficult conversations and the need to rebuild trust. But with Mark by my side, I felt a renewed sense of hope and determination. The affair with David had ended, but the lessons learned and the emotional scars would remain. It was a journey towards healing, a testament to the resilience of love and the power of forgiveness. As Mark and I faced the future together, I vowed never to take his love for granted again, cherishing every moment and striving to be the partner he deserved. In the end, love and honesty had prevailed, guiding us through the storm and into a new dawn of understanding and commitment. As the days turned into weeks, the aftermath of my confession to Mark settled into a strained routine. We tried to move forward, but the shadow of my betrayal lingered over us like a dark cloud. Our interactions were polite but distant, and every moment felt charged with unspoken tension. Mark's eyes, once filled with warmth and trust, now held a hint of sadness and doubt. I couldn't blame him. I had shattered the foundation of our relationship, and rebuilding it seemed like an insurmountable task. Despite the discomfort, I was determined to make amends. I threw myself into our relationship, trying to show Mark through my actions how deeply I regretted my mistakes. I planned thoughtful surprises, cooked his favourite meals, and made a conscious effort to listen more and argue less. Slowly, very slowly, I began to see glimpses of the man I once knew returning. But it was far from easy. Each day was a battle against the remnants of guilt and the haunting memories of my time with David. The emotional scars were deep, and I often found myself questioning if we could ever truly move past this. My thoughts frequently drifted to David, wondering how he was coping. We had agreed to keep our distance, but in the quiet moments of the night, I couldn't help but miss him. It was a conflicting feeling, one that filled me with shame. One afternoon, as I was tidying up the house, I came across an old photo album. It was filled with pictures from the early days of my relationship with Mark. Our smiles were wide and genuine, eyes sparkling with the promise of a future together. Flipping through those pages, I felt a pang of longing for the simplicity and purity of those times. That evening, I decided to do something different. I suggested to Mark that we go out for a date night, something we hadn't done in a long time. To my relief, he agreed, and we headed to our favourite restaurant. The familiar setting brought back a flood of memories, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of normalcy. We talked about everything and nothing, just like we used to. It was a small step, but it felt significant. As we walked back to the car, hand in hand, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. A few days later, I received an unexpected call from David. He sounded distraught, and I could hear the desperation in his voice. "Sophia, I need to see you. It's important." My heart raced at the sound of his voice, a mix of worry and the residual feelings I had tried so hard to bury. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him. We chose a discreet cafe on the outskirts of town, a place where we wouldn't be recognised. When I arrived, I found David looking uncharacteristically dishevelled, his usual confident demeanour replaced by a look of anxiety. He wasted no time in explaining the reason for his urgency. "Sophia, I think someone at work knows about us. I've been getting strange messages and I'm worried this could blow up and affect both of our careers." His words sent a chill down my spine. The thought of our secret being exposed was terrifying. I had worked hard to repair my marriage, and the last thing I needed was for this to come out and destroy everything all over again. We discussed our options, trying to figure out who might know and how to handle the situation. The tension was palpable, and the stakes had never felt higher. As we talked, the old feelings resurfaced, complicating an already dire situation. I couldn't deny the chemistry between us, but I knew that giving in to those feelings again would only lead to more pain. We agreed to be more cautious and to avoid any unnecessary interactions at work. It was a fragile truce, one that left me feeling even more on edge. The fear of exposure hung over me like a dark cloud, affecting every aspect of my life. I found it increasingly difficult to concentrate at work, my performance slipping as a result. Colleagues began to notice, and I could see the concern in their eyes. Mark, too, sensed that something was off. He asked me repeatedly if everything was all right, and each time I reassured him with a forced smile. The guilt was suffocating, and I felt trapped in a never-ending cycle of deceit and regret. One evening, as I sat alone in the living room, the weight of it all became too much to bear. I broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. Mark found me in that state, and his concern turned to alarm. "Sophia, what's wrong? Please talk to me." Through my tears, I confessed the whole story about David's call and the fear of being exposed. Mark listened in stunned silence, the hurt and betrayal evident in his eyes. "Sophia, I thought we were past this. I thought we were trying to rebuild." His words cut deep, and I felt a fresh wave of guilt wash over me. "I'm so sorry, Mark. I never wanted this to happen. I was just trying to protect us, but I see now that I've only made things worse." Mark took a deep breath, his expression softening slightly. "We can't keep living like this, Sophia. We need to decide if we're going to fight for this marriage or let it go." His ultimatum hung in the air, heavy with the weight of our shared history. I knew that this was a pivotal moment, one that would determine the future of our relationship. I took his hand, my voice trembling. "I want to fight for us, Mark. I love you, and I want to make this work. But I need your help. We need to rebuild our trust and find a way to move forward." Mark nodded, his grip tightening on my hand. "I love you too, Sophia. Let's take it one day at a time and see where it leads us." It was a glimmer of hope, a fragile thread to hold onto amidst the chaos. We began the slow process of rebuilding, attending couples therapy, and working through our issues together. Each session was a painful but necessary step towards healing. As the months passed, the wounds began to heal, though the scars remained. We learned to communicate more openly, to face our problems head-on rather than letting them fester. Our relationship grew stronger, forged in the fire of adversity. Through it all, the fear of our secret being exposed gradually faded, replaced by a renewed sense of trust and commitment. David eventually moved to another city, and with him, the lingering threat of our affair's exposure. It was a bittersweet farewell, but one that brought a sense of closure. Mark and I continued to work on our marriage, and slowly we began to find our way back to the love and connection we once had. The journey was far from easy, but it was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of forgiveness. In the end, we emerged stronger, with a deeper appreciation for each other and the life we had built together. The past would always be a part of us, but it no longer defined us. We had faced our demons and come out on the other side, ready to face whatever the future might hold, together.